Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining me on AM Prime. Certainly is a pleasure. My next guest, well, we had a conversation with them last week over organic farming, converting bio-waste into useful byproducts. Well, this morning we're expanding on such about how you, within your home, within your community, can do your part by simple, basic steps. I'm joined by co-founder and managing director of Cube Group Farms Limited. Well, it's a bit of a tongue twister for me, isn't it? Mr. Hamlyn Holder is here in studio. Good morning, welcome back.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me again.
Well, thank you very much for joining us once more on the program. I see you don your red Christmas into Carnival.
Of course. Season to be merry.
Certainly indeed. So, Hamlyn, last week we had a conversation on organic farming, and I'm glad that you've taken the time. Thank you for being generous and wanting to educate the population and inform them about what they can do, simple little steps that can go a long way. So what do we have here today? What did you bring with you?
Right, so I brought out some samples that that may be typical in the average household. And just to give an idea and a small demonstration of the power that all of us have at home, and how we can utilize the resources that we waste every day. And we're talking here about organic waste and making sure that it goes and turns into something of value. Yeah?
I think there needs to be clarification over exactly what organic waste is. I don't think people might fully understand.
Yes, so organic waste is definitely something that can be what they call compostable. So there are certain things, there's actually I don't want to get too technical, but there's a difference between biodegradable and compostable. We are looking for things that are compostable, things that could return to nature, basically being able to break down and return in its natural elements that could be reused either by, once its energy is applied into a new life form, it could become a plant, we could absorb it as food and nutrients. So anything that is able to break down and return to nature.
Just it's more like to me it sounds like, I said, I don't want to get too technical. Biodegradable seems as though it's a process of recycled goods.
Yes.
Biodegradable sounds like it's something that's completely natural.
Yes.
Based on what you're saying.
You're looking at more natural, naturally occurring, naturally existing elements. As opposed to things that are man-made and put into such a complex chemical structure. Things like plastics and so on, they tend to be reformed in such a strong bonded new form that it's hard to break down until like hundreds of years. These are things that are in a natural chemical-based form made by organic matter, plants, animals, and are much easier to break back down and return into the cycle of life.
So I think based off of the conversation that we had last week, one thing we learned was that a lot of our waste here in Trinidad is actually food.
Yep.
But there are food items that one can use in compost.
Of course.
That you utilize probably every day in your life, in your daily living. Mm-hmm. What are some of those items? So
you want the nutrients, you want everything to be broken down into two facets, if you could visualize. You want some to go to you, because you want to benefit from it.
Yeah.
And then you want some to return to the environment. And this is where we start to talk about sustainability. So what comes to you, whatever's the remainder, you may not have any value for it, all right? So I have, for example, you're making your eggs, for those who eat eggs, just giving an example here, right? You have the eggshells, right? You may think, hey, what's the purpose of this? Let me dump this, right? But, and a long time ago, I had to learn, hey, take that and return it to the land, you know? Actually put it, because it's full with a lot of, remember when an egg is formed, it's giving it all the nutrients it needs to sustain the first few weeks of life,
yes.
Right? So that it has it's basically like a knapsack of nutrients. So it has calcium, it has potassium, it has silicon. All of these things that are meant for the chicken or the young animal to survive, right? Even in a seed, it's jam-packed for that nutrients. Like that's why you see in microgreens it's so healthy. If you have bananas, you eat the banana skin is a protectant for the plant. So it protects the seeds and the flesh inside of it, and it actually tastes bad. But it's that way for a reason, right? But it's full still with a lot of the potassium, right, which is needed for flower growth and producing fruits.
I think I'm not too keen on trying what banana peel is. Yeah,
No, they may have some recipes out there, who knows?
not sure. Like
Yeah.
banana bread. Never had a banana peel in banana bread.
No.
But you know, it's funny enough. I mentioned this last week, and I'm glad that you brought it here as an example. When I was a little boy, I remember that the coffee grounds and the eggshells,
Yes.
we never threw it away. We used to actually go and throw it in the plant pots. And that
Yes.
is something that, you know, we're seeing happening more and more now.
Yeah, so that's the culture that we want to instill and inculcate in society. Now we need to get back to those good times, I call them. I mean, we are so busy with life, and you know, from the morning you have to prepare breakfast, you have to make your lunch on a weekend, and then you have to go out and shop. So it's just to see how we could incorporate it into our life. What I do is I take these things, I might put it in a knapsack. I have some old ice cream bowls. I just dump it there, put it in the freezer. But when I have my little time for gardening and stuff, I'll take it out. Because it's frozen and it's already broken down in terms of the structure, it's easier to break down in the soil. And then I will, of course, feed it to my lovely worm farms, which I'm sure we're going to talk about.
Oh, certainly, we're certainly going to talk about. But before we just get into that, just for a better understanding, I know that you said that it's full of nutrition, the banana peels, for example, the eggshells. But is it that when it breaks down, it gives that soil the nutrients that is necessary for a plant to grow, to survive, to thrive?
Correct. You're using the plants to feed the plants, and that's how nature intended it. Nature works in a cycle. It works in symbiosis with each animal. So when you cut that chain, cut that circle, I know last week we spoke about, you know, the closed loop. Once you cut that, it starts to make this whole system uneconomical, unfeasible, and it starts to impact the environment. So once we have that nice circular, okay, the plant has given its fruit. We take the fruit, we eat the fruit. What's remaining from the fruit, we could give back to the land. The land will then go and give it back to probably the earthworms, who will break it down even more and give it to the plant. The plant takes it back up, and again, voila, we have a fruit again for us to eat. And you know, that continues the cycle. It's highly economical. There's an economical value that is derived by working within the circle and the cycle, right? When you work outside of it, now we have to go and get US dollars, we have to import, you know, and bring in a whole set of produce that may not be of the high nutritional value that we could get here.
Now, you've been very kind enough to bring a lot of things with you today. We're going to get into that. Now, what else do you have with you here?
So I have the actual output or the produce of composting, right? And this is just to make the viewers and those at home a little more aware of what it looks like. There's a lot of misnomers, misunderstandings. People think, oh my gosh, my compost bin is going to smell because of all this rotten food. So we have here actual vermicastings and composted matter. And, you know, you could smell it. You could take a whiff.
There's barely any smell to this.
It's earthy. They call it very earthy. All right. So, and this is what you call, you know, a living soil. It's filled with fungi, bacteria, all the good ones that are needed for plant growth. And this is what we harvest. And it's a type of manure similar to, I know a lot of people will use their chicken manure. You could actually take your chicken manure, you could take your horse manure, add it to it, and what that will do is expand the nutrient regime. So horses may have a certain type of nutrient, sort of like the nutrient facts. You might get silicon, boron, and so on. But you're now getting the full periodic table, the more diverse, and nature is all about diversity. The more diverse the nutrients are, the better the plant will be able to survive, because every plant needs a different nutrient in a different amount. Tomatoes might need boron, right? Bananas need potassium. Everyone needs a lot of them need silica. They need carbon, right, to make their structure. Bamboo will need that to make their structure, which they take from the atmosphere. So there are so many different nutrients. I don't specialize in any. I'll take bat guano. I'll take worms. I will take the cows, the sheep, any. Because I know I'm given a wide nutrient base of different elements that each one will eat a certain diet. And you never know what plant you may be growing, but you know you have a full nutrient bank available.
Remember, folks, we're speaking about how you can do your part in terms of, just helping the environment, sustainability, organic matter. And Hamlyn has brought a lot of props with him. In fact, you can see this big bucket now between Hamlyn and I. Hamlyn, exactly what is this?
Yes,
I mean, apart from plastic with a pipe, what is it?
So this is a recycled plastic that was used for frozen egg products from an ice cream store. And we just repurposed it to make what we'll typically call a worm farm. So I just want to explain what a worm farm is. You know, it's not a 40-acre expanse of land. It's a very small, compact unit, as you could see here, that anybody could have in their home, even an apartment. And they can, do their part to reduce organic waste. So starting at the top, what it is basically 2 bins. It's 2 bins in one. I could kind of lift up one so you can see.
Yeah.
Right? And at the bottom of the second bin is just some perforations and holes. And what this allows is that when you're adding like rainwater or any water, it comes down and collects. And then that's why you have a tap here. And that allows you to collect what we call the liquid gold, right?
Liquid gold?
Yes, this is worm tea, all right?
What in the world is worm tea?
Worm tea.
You had me at liquid gold. Worm tea, it's a different story.
Right, so in terms of all your manures, I always put worms at the top. Sorry for all the chicken and horses and bat enthusiasts. So, I may start, there's chicken, goat, sheep, maybe cow, horses, bat. But I put the worm because worms have evolved with plants for so long, that they know how to break things down and feed directly to the roots in a way that doesn't burn the plant. Sometimes you see a little burnt edges around the plant if you use too strong a nutrient or fertilizer. But that tends to not happen with the worms because when you walk in the savanna, they're right underneath there, right? So there are many types of worms. What we have here is one variety, the Indian blue worm. We also have the red wiggler, which is another worm. Some people have African night crawlers. When you get into it, it's so much that you learn about worms. And just to be clear, this is different from larvae, right? Larvae is what turns into an insect. Worms stay worms, right? A worm could typically last 10 to 15 years.
Really?
Yep.
That's the lifespan of a worm. That's incredible.
10 to 15 years. So you could have this bin creating organic matter for, good until it gets into an old worm and can no longer reproduce. About 10, 15 years if you treat it right. Another aspect of a worm is that, in about 10 to 15 days, they can make eggs. And they continuously reproduce. Another fun fact is that if you have a pong of worms, you'll get a pong of fertilizer. So
that is incredible.
So imagine that rate and speed and efficiency. Now, not all worms will compost at the same speed and rate. So we tend to look at what we call compostable, which is like the Indian blue or the red wiggler. And you just need to, reach out to your worm provider. Bosse Farms, they have red wigglers and some worms, nutrient remediation as well. Thinking of some companies, but you all could reach out. What we have done is started a worm society. So you could just join in, and if our worms die, we will replenish it with another person from the community worms. So you can reach out to Cube Root Farms page and just say, hey, I'm interested in being part of that worm group and sharing knowledge within worms and so on.
Just out of curiosity, what we refer to as earthworms, is that what you refer to as?
Yes. Earthworms is what we are looking at. We're talking Trinidad has the variety that came from Africa. And well, you know, when bringing soil and produce, they come transfer for many years. So there's the African night crawlers, which is a typical one. That one can grow very long. It's also a voracious eater, up to about maybe 12 inches. Some of them, we have some local varieties that are much slower. They don't eat as much, but they still will benefit your garden in some way or form.
So take us through this process, because like I said, you've got some other props there with you.
Right.
And you've brought the worm farm. How do we go about even setting up this worm farm?
Right. So there, just a brief run through. Normally we send a guide with how to take care of it. As I mentioned, you have the two compartments. The main one is the top one here. The air is allowed to, there's some perforated holes at the top, so it's allowed to breathe. You want oxygen. Oxygen is essential. You want oxygen in the soil, and you want oxygen in the worm tea as well. All right. I also use air pump just to make sure it's always aerated. If you don't oxygenate, some of the things you will see is it starts to get that smell that people don't like. It's called an anaerobic smell. And it tends to be that rotten egg, drain smell. But if you're treating it right, you could smell your worm. There's nothing. It smells like earth, right? It's strong. And that's how you know. If your worms are crawling to the top of the bin, they want to get out because it's either too hot. You need to keep your worm bin in a nice cool area. I keep it under a nice thick tree. So the tree benefits if there's any worms coming out. And yeah, basically you take like some rainwater or distilled water, you pour it at the top, all right? And what that is going to do is give you the same amount of water to take off from the top of the bottom to give you your worm tea.
Okay, okay.
Right, and once you have this, you can then pour it into your spray bottle. I usually use a 1-to-1 ratio, just to dilute it, 50-50, and then you spray the plants. Spray the leaves, spray underneath, and then you could pour some by the roots as well, because that's filled with the nutrients, nitrates, especially from the worm. So what the worm will typically do is break down carbon and nitrogen. And so you'd see things like cardboard here being consumed. We use a lot of coconut core. So if you could imagine all that coconuts, everybody drinking coconuts, they throw away the coconut husk. And there are tons of coconut husk being produced, a lot. So you can take that to make the organic matter, and the coconut husk will break down. The worms will take all that good nutrients that a coconut has inside of it and make it available now for other plants.
This sounds incredible. This is an entire ecosystem inside of it.
Yeah, yeah. And the good thing about it, they never want to leave here. If you treat it right, they are what you call cryptozoic. So while you have all these bright lights around here, they don't want to go outside. These are composters, and they want to live inside of the darkness and just do their duty, which is to compost the organic matter. If you have an old pumpkin with any mold, it will eat that. They want to eat that. So all the bad things that we would throw away, it's like
just go in here.
Cherries, pastels, and rum cake for them. They will just eat it, eat it, eat it.
And then apart from that, it's like the life cycle as well. If the worms pass away, when they pass away,
right,
they also become part of the entire process.
Of course. And that's it. It's everybody. I mean, the energy is keeping us all together. The energy and the chemistry. And then when you know, life has gone away, it stays there within the nutrients and goes into another life form. You know, so it's always a nice cyclical phenomena. And that's where we need to preserve that. We need to understand it and, you know, give its credence.
This also, and I pointed out, from the explanation that you've given to us this morning, sounds extremely inexpensive.
Of course,
sounds
of course.
Very inexpensive.
That's right. And some people pay $400 or $500 for a bag of fertilizer, and they'll probably be buying bags of fertilizers every month or so, right? And you can do this with your waste, which is below $500 to do the setup. So this is why we want to encourage people that, the more we do this, the less methane goes up into the atmosphere, the less carbon emissions, less greenhouse gas or climate change impact, and we could kind of turn the tide and get nature back to where it needs to be.
Certainly, but one concern.
Sure.
Every mother or every lady within the household will say, I don't want that near my house. It's going to bring rats. It's going to bring roaches.
Right.
It's going to smell.
Right. So let's talk about that, the misconceptions. So as I mentioned, once it's oxygenated and treated right, with the right, I have even seen people use drain water, put it through the worm bin, and it comes and cleans the drain water because it takes away all that anaerobic bacteria. Things that smell bad for a reason. It's full with mycotoxins and things that are bad because a certain bacteria has learned to live with that. What you have here is the good bacteria, and I can't emphasize, good fungus, mycorrhizae, and that is going to replace all that bad bacteria. So it does not smell, right? It smells like earth. It smells like you just dived into the earth and burrowing through the savannah, all right? The savannah doesn't smell.
No, it doesn't.
But the dump does, right? So
Boy.
once you keep it oxygenated, once you treat it right and use the right process, and they will actually repel other insects, all right? Inside of here, you don't see roaches, you would see composters, right? Roaches tend to, scurry around and travel very far. These don't live within a certain area. So it stays within the bucket, it stays within the worm farm.
I'm curious to know, there's something else there with you in that bag, those little powders that you've brought with you. What are those?
So this is azomite. Again, I'll just explain azomite, A to Z of minerals, including trace elements, azomite. And that is what got us into the organic way of farming. It's USDA. It has a OMRI, Organic Material Research Institute. And basically, azomite is mined out of a place in Utah where the glaciers receded. And again, a lot of dead matter, oceanic and volcanic activity caused the nutrient concentration to be so high and so diverse. It has over 70 trace elements and minerals. And to start off your worm bin, because it may not have the organic matter, we normally add azomite, and the worms use it as grit because they don't have teeth. So it crushes and helps them with their digestive process as well. And also the bacteria and fungi that are beneficial also gets a boost. So once you start off with the azomite, and you could add it from time to time, and azomite is used in plants. It's used for bees, honey production, used to increase your milk production because it's organic based. And again, it's all part of the cycle, and this is just meant to give you that additional boost.
Now, let's speak about heading into 2024, because I like this, and we're all about education and information, but we're also encouraging families and communities to come together and develop their own worm farms. Because as you can see, the benefits this morning, there's literally no negatives at all associated with this. It's all positives. In 2024 going forward, last week we spoke, towards cooperation and collaboration, and ICA, right? The institute, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture. What more is to come with ICA, EMA, the Ministry of Agriculture?
Yes, so next year we are working a sort of movement and consortium of sorts. We are collaborating a lot. It's about collaborating and expanding the community, expanding the awareness. So together with the EMA, ICA, the Ministry of Agriculture, UE, the forestry, a lot of entities that produce, even some of the local soil producers like Thompson Soil and some other Truppy Mulch. We are going to collaborate to see how efficient we could start off probably very small, and also see if we could scale up and get so much involvement in the community that we could start to pull all that waste that is just going to the dumps and see how we could reuse it to add value to society. So there will be a lot of effort and energies, and we ask the public to come out, to reach out, to be educated, to be part of the family, the community, and see how we could work together. And you know, we are thankful to WESN to having us here on your platform to share the message. And you know, we're really looking forward to 2024, where we're actually going to really, you know, up the coverage on what are the viable methods. There's so many different ways, but sustainable methods, as you mentioned, you know, what are the downsides? Very minimal. And these are things that people just need to know about.
Yeah, and apart from which, I'm glad that we were able to have the discussion that there are social and community positives with this, benefits, ecological benefits, and the conversations, the economic benefits as well. We had it last week and you touched on it this morning as well. Yeah. So I look forward to further conversations in 2024. I'm really excited for that.
Of course.
Before we leave, if you can just remind the viewing audience, should they want more information on setting up their own worm farms, who they can contact?
Sure. So definitely you all could reach out to our handles, our Facebook page, TikTok, Instagram. We have a YouTube channel. This might probably go on it as well. Cube Root Farms, that is Cube Root Farms, www.cuberootfarms.com. And they have some other, we could also direct you to some other worm providers locally, persons that may have different varieties. We are trying to get as many varieties as we can, and just, you know, encouraging all to be part of the food waste recycling. It's all about segregating that waste and also, you know, recycling and getting it back into the cycle. So for those who are interested, through ICA, you would see it from the swim call, EMA. Feel free to reach out and ask them, or you can reach out to myself directly through Cube Root Farms.
Certainly will. Mr. Hamlyn Holder, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for all your time, for all your efforts and energies in doing all this for educating people and making them aware. And certainly, as I mentioned, I look forward to all the conversation in 2020. All the best to you and to Cube Root Farms for 2024.
All the best to you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.
And a Happy New Year. Keep well, sir.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on AM Prime, and when we return, the conversations continue.